On April 25, 1999, a 4-year-old boy named Sammy Resendiz was playing in his San Bernardino apartment complex. His mother stepped inside for just 3 minutes to grab his jacket. When she returned to the courtyard, Sammy was gone. 25 years later, no one knows what happened to him. This is his story. Before we begin, I want to say that this case involves a missing child, and out of respect for Sammy and his family, we'll be focusing on the facts, the investigation, and the ongoing search for answers. If you have any information about Sammy Resendiz, please contact the San Bernardino Police Department. Every detail matters. Let's go back to the spring of 1999. San Bernardino, California. Late April. The weather was warming up, and families in the apartment complex on North Meridian Avenue were starting to spend more time outside. It was a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where kids played together in shared courtyards while parents kept watch from nearby. Sammy Resendiz had just turned 4 years old 2 weeks earlier. He was a bright, energetic little boy with dark hair and brown eyes. His mother described him as curious, always asking questions, always exploring. He loved playing outside, riding his little tricycle around the courtyard, and making friends with the other children in the complex. April 25th started like any other Sunday. Sammy's mother was home with him that afternoon. They had lunch together, and Sammy was getting restless, the way young children do when they have been inside too long. He asked if he could go outside to play. His mother agreed. The courtyard was safe, enclosed, and she could see it from her apartment window. Other families were out there too. It seemed perfectly safe. Sammy went outside around 2:30 in the afternoon. He was wearing a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and little sneakers. His mother watched him from the window as he started playing near the entrance of the courtyard. There were other children around, other parents. Everything seemed normal. About 10 minutes later, Sammy's mother realized the afternoon was getting cooler. She decided to bring him a light jacket. She stepped away from the window and went to his room to grab it. This took maybe 2 minutes, perhaps 3 at most. She walked back outside, jacket in hand, ready to help Sammy put it on. But Sammy was not where she had left him. She looked around the courtyard. He was not by the swing set. He was not near the other children. She called his name, no response. She walked quickly around the entire courtyard, checking every corner, behind every planter, near every doorway. Sammy was nowhere to be seen. She started asking the other parents. Had anyone seen Sammy? Where did he go? Some remembered seeing him just moments ago. One neighbor thought he might have wandered toward the parking lot. Another said they saw him near the entrance, but no one had actually seen him leave. No one had seen him walk away with anyone. He had simply vanished. By 2:45 in the afternoon, just 15 minutes after Sammy went outside, his mother was in a full panic. She ran through the complex, knocking on doors, checking laundry rooms, storage areas, anywhere a curious 4-year-old might wander. Nothing. At 3 o'clock, she called the police. The San Bernardino Police Department responded immediately. When a child that young goes missing, every second counts. Officers arrived within minutes and began a systematic search of the apartment complex. They went door to door, asking residents if they had seen Sammy, if they had noticed anything unusual, any strangers in the area. The complex was not large, maybe 30 units total. It should have been easy to find a 4-year-old boy. But as the afternoon wore on and the sun started to set, Sammy was still missing. Police expanded the search beyond the apartment complex. They checked nearby streets, parks, businesses, vacant lots. They brought in search dogs trained to track missing persons. The dogs picked up Sammy's scent in the courtyard but lost it near the street, suggesting he may have been taken in a vehicle. By nightfall, the reality was setting in. This was not a case of a child hiding or wandering off. Something had happened to Sammy Resendiz. The San Bernardino Police Department officially classified him as a missing child and began a full-scale investigation. They set up a command center, brought in additional detectives, and started conducting formal interviews with everyone in the apartment complex. The FBI was notified. Sammy's case was entered into the National Crime Information Center database. His face would soon be on missing child posters across California. Sammy's mother was devastated. She kept replaying those 3 minutes in her mind. 3 minutes. That's all it took. She had only stepped inside to get his jacket. She was trying to be a good mother, keeping him warm. How could he just disappear? The guilt was overwhelming, even though every investigator, every family member, every friend told her it was not her fault. But mothers blame themselves. That's what they do. The investigation moved quickly in those first 48 hours. Detectives interviewed every single resident of the apartment complex. They collected statements, timelines, any piece of information that might help. Several residents reported seeing Sammy playing in the courtyard that afternoon. A few remembered seeing him near the entrance around 2:30 or 2:40, but after that, nothing. No one saw him leave. No one saw him get into a car. No one saw anyone talking to him or leading him away. Detectives also looked into Sammy's family situation. This is standard procedure in missing child cases. Unfortunately, statistics show that family members are often involved when a child goes missing. But in Sammy's case, there were no red flags. His mother had no history of neglect or mistreatment. There was no custody dispute. His father was not in the picture, but he was ruled out early in the investigation. Extended family members were cooperative and devastated. Everyone who knew Sammy described him as a happy, well cared for child. The focus then shifted to potential strangers. Had anyone seen an unfamiliar person in the area that day? Had there been any suspicious vehicles? This is where the investigation hit its first major obstacle. The apartment complex was located on a busy street. Cars passed by constantly. People walked through the area. It was not a gated community with security cameras. In 1999, security cameras were not as common as they are today. There was no footage of the courtyard, no recording of the parking lot, nothing. A few residents mentioned seeing a dark-colored sedan parked near the complex that afternoon, but no one could provide a license plate number or a detailed description. One witness thought they saw a man sitting in the car, but could not describe him. Was this connected to Sammy's disappearance? Detectives could not say for certain. Without more information, it was just another dead end. Police also looked into known offenders in the area. San Bernardino had its share of registered individuals with concerning histories. Detectives visited each one, verified their whereabouts on April 25th, and looked for any possible connection to Sammy or his family. Again, nothing concrete emerged. Some had alibis. Others were cooperative and allowed searches of their homes and vehicles. No evidence linking any of them to Sammy's disappearance was found. As days turned into weeks, the case grew colder. The initial surge of media attention began to fade. The search teams were called back. The command center was scaled down. But for Sammy's mother and family, every day without answers was torture. Where was he? Was he safe? Was he scared? Was he calling for her? These questions haunted her every waking moment and filled her nightmares. The community tried to stay hopeful. Volunteers organized searches on weekends. Local churches held prayer vigils. Sammy's face was everywhere, on telephone poles, in store windows, on the backs of shopping receipts. But as the months passed, hope began to dim. The sad reality is that when a child goes missing like this, when they vanish without a trace in broad daylight, the outcomes are rarely positive. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Sammy's case is how easily it could have been prevented with today's technology. In 1999, there were no smartphones, no instant alerts, no social media to spread the word immediately. The Amber Alert system, which sends emergency notifications when a child is abducted, did not exist yet. In fact, Sammy's case is one of many that highlighted the need for such a system. The Amber Alert would be created just 3 years later in 2002, but for Sammy, it came too late. Detectives continued working the case, but leads were scarce. They received tips from the public, hundreds of them in the first few months. Each one had to be investigated, no matter how unlikely. Someone claimed to have seen a boy matching Sammy's description at a gas station in Arizona. Detectives drove there, showed photos, interviewed staff. It was not him. Another caller said they saw Sammy at a park in Nevada. Again, investigators followed up. Again, it led nowhere. There were also the cruel hoax calls, people claiming to have Sammy, demanding ransom, or providing false information just for attention. Each of these calls put Sammy's family through emotional hell, giving them hope only to crush it moments later. The police had to investigate every single one, even when they suspected it was fake, because what if it was not? What if this was the real call, the one that would bring Sammy home? As the investigation stretched into the year 2000, detectives began exploring other theories. Could Sammy have wandered away and met with an accident? Search teams had covered the immediate area extensively, but could they have missed something? They organized additional searches of nearby areas, drainage systems, abandoned buildings, anywhere a small child might have ended up if he had wandered off alone. They found nothing. Another theory was that Sammy might have been taken by someone passing through the area. San Bernardino sits along major highways connecting Los Angeles to Las Vegas and other cities. Could someone have been driving through, spotted Sammy alone for those few critical moments, and made a terrible decision? It is possible, but without witnesses or evidence, it remained just a theory. Detectives also considered the possibility that someone in the apartment complex was not being truthful. Could a resident have been involved? Could someone have taken Sammy into their apartment and then moved him later after the initial searches? Polygraph tests were offered to anyone willing to take them. Several residents agreed. Results were inconclusive or showed no deception, but polygraphs are not perfect. They can be a tool, but they are not definitive proof of innocence or guilt. Years passed. Sammy's case remained open, but active leads dried up. His mother never stopped searching. She kept his room exactly as it was the day he disappeared. His toys, his clothes, his little bed, all waiting for him to come home. She celebrated his birthday every year, lighting candles on a cake, singing to an empty room, holding on to the hope that somehow, some way, he was still alive. The emotional toll on families of missing children is impossible to fully understand unless you have lived it. There is no closure, no funeral, no grave to visit, just endless uncertainty. Is your child alive? Are they suffering? Do they remember you? Are they being cared for, or are they in danger? These questions never go away. They consume every thought, every moment. Sammy's mother became an advocate for missing children. She worked with organizations dedicated to finding missing kids and supporting their families. She shared Sammy's story at events, on local news programs, anywhere someone would listen. She wanted people to remember him, to keep looking, to never give up. Her strength was remarkable, but those close to her knew the pain she carried every single day. In 2005, 6 years after Sammy disappeared, there was a potential break in the case. A man was arrested in another state for an unrelated offense. During questioning, he made comments that suggested he might know something about missing children in California. Detectives from San Bernardino traveled to interview him. They showed him photos of Sammy. The man claimed he had information but kept changing his story. He wanted deals, reduced sentences, special treatment. Detectives quickly realized he was manipulating them, trying to use false information as leverage. He knew nothing about Sammy. It was another dead end, another cruel twist. The case received renewed media attention in 2010 on the 11th anniversary of Sammy's disappearance. Local news stations ran retrospectives. Reporters interviewed the lead detectives, who admitted they had no new leads but assured the public the case was still active. Age-progressed photos of Sammy were released, showing what he might look like as a teenager. The hope was that someone might recognize him, that maybe he was alive somewhere, not knowing his real identity. Age progression is both a science and an art. Forensic artists use photos of the missing child and their relatives to predict how they might age. They consider genetics, family traits, and typical aging patterns. For Sammy, the age-progressed images showed a handsome teenage boy with his mother's eyes and his father's jawline. His mother broke down when she saw them. It was like looking at a ghost, a version of her son that should exist but might not. The introduction of social media in the late 2000s brought new opportunities to spread awareness about missing children. Facebook pages were created for Sammy. His story was shared thousands of times. People from across the country commented, offering prayers and support. Some claimed to have seen him, leading to new tips for investigators to follow. But once again, none of them panned out. DNA technology also advanced significantly in the years after Sammy disappeared. His mother provided DNA samples, which were entered into national databases. If remains were ever found, they could be quickly identified. It was a grim reality she had to face. Part of her wanted answers, even painful ones. Another part of her clung to the hope that no match would ever be found because Sammy was still alive somewhere. In 2015, 16 years after Sammy vanished, detectives assigned to cold cases took another look at his file. They re-interviewed some of the original witnesses, hoping that time might have jogged memories or loosened tongues. Sometimes people who were scared to talk in the immediate aftermath of an incident become more willing years later. But in Sammy's case, the new interviews yielded nothing substantial. The story remained the same. A little boy playing in a courtyard, there one moment, gone the next. One detective working the cold case became particularly invested in finding answers for Sammy's family. He spent months going through every page of the case file, every interview transcript, every tip that had been called in. He was looking for something, anything that previous investigators might have missed. He found several tips that had never been fully followed up on, mostly because they seemed unlikely at the time. He decided to track them down anyway. One tip from 1999 mentioned a woman who lived in the complex temporarily and moved out shortly after Sammy disappeared. She had been interviewed briefly but was not considered a person of interest. The detective located her in 2016. She was living in Oregon. He traveled there to interview her. She remembered the day Sammy disappeared and was cooperative, but she had no new information. She had moved out because her lease was ending, not because of anything related to Sammy. Another tip mentioned a maintenance worker who had access to all the apartments in the complex. He had been investigated in 1999 and cleared, but the detective wanted to revisit it. He tracked down the former maintenance worker, now retired. The man agreed to another interview and even voluntarily provided a DNA sample. He had nothing to hide. The DNA was compared against samples collected from evidence back in 1999. No match. Another dead end. The detective also looked into the possibility that Sammy's case might be connected to other missing children cases in California during that time period. Were there patterns? Similar circumstances? He found several cases of young children who had vanished in the late 90s in Southern California, but none of them appeared to be connected. Each case had its own unique circumstances, its own set of suspects and theories. As the 20th anniversary of Sammy's disappearance approached in 2019, his mother prepared for another round of media interviews. She was now in her 50s, and the years of stress and heartbreak had taken their toll, but her resolve had not weakened. She appeared on local news programs, sharing Sammy's story once again, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. The tagline was always the same: "It is never too late to do the right thing. If you know something, please speak up." The 20th anniversary also brought a new effort from the San Bernardino Police Department. They held a press conference announcing a reward for information leading to Sammy's whereabouts. The reward, funded by donations from the community and a national missing children's organization, was $25,000. The police hoped that the passage of time and the financial incentive might motivate someone who had been reluctant to come forward. Tips came in after the press conference, but once again, none led to any solid answers. Some were people who wanted to help but had no real information. Others were hoping to claim the reward with false stories. Each tip still had to be vetted, each caller interviewed. The process was exhausting for the detectives and emotionally draining for Sammy's family, who got their hopes up with each new lead only to have them dashed. During the COVID pandemic in 2020, many cold case investigations slowed down as resources were diverted to public health emergencies, but Sammy's case was never truly forgotten. The detective who had become invested in the case continued working on it during his off hours. He corresponded with other detectives across the country who were working on similar missing children cases. He attended virtual conferences on cold case investigations and learned about new techniques and technologies. One of the most promising developments in recent years has been the use of genetic genealogy. This is the same technique that was used to identify the Golden State Killer. Essentially, investigators can take DNA evidence from a crime scene and upload it to public genealogy databases. They can then build family trees and identify potential suspects based on genetic matches. This technique has solved dozens of cold cases in the past few years. The challenge with Sammy's case is that there is no clear DNA evidence from an abductor. Unlike a case where there is physical evidence left at a scene, Sammy simply vanished. There were no signs of struggle, no biological evidence, nothing concrete that could be tested. However, investigators have kept DNA samples from various items collected during the original investigation, hoping that future technology might make them useful. In 2022, on the 23rd anniversary of Sammy's disappearance, a true crime podcast decided to feature his case. The podcast had a large following and had previously helped generate new leads in other cold cases. The host spent months researching Sammy's story, interviewing detectives, family members, and residents from the old apartment complex. The podcast series was released over several weeks, and each episode ended with a plea for information. The podcast brought Sammy's case to a national audience. Thousands of people who had never heard of him before were now familiar with his story. Social media exploded with discussions about the case. Amateur sleuths offered their own theories. Some were thoughtful and well-researched, others were wild speculation, but the increased attention did result in new tips. The San Bernardino Police Department received dozens of calls in the weeks following the podcast's release. Most of the new tips were similar to what had been reported before, possible sightings that turned out to be other children, theories about what might have happened, but one tip stood out. A woman called saying her ex-husband had made strange comments about a missing boy from California years ago. She said he had lived in the San Bernardino area in the late 90s and had always acted suspicious when missing children cases were mentioned on the news. Detectives located the ex-husband and interviewed him. He denied any involvement in Sammy's disappearance and provided documentation showing he was at work on April 25, 1999. His employer's records from that time were still available and confirmed his alibi, another lead that went nowhere. Despite the setbacks, Sammy's mother remains hopeful. In a recent interview, she said she would never stop looking for her son. She believes he is still alive, that he is out there somewhere, maybe not knowing who he really is. She wants him to know that she never gave up, that she has thought about him every single day for more than 2 decades. She wants him to know that he has a family who loves him and has been waiting for him to come home. The San Bernardino Police Department continues to list Sammy's case as an active investigation. Any new information is followed up on. The case file is reviewed periodically by fresh eyes, hoping that a new perspective might reveal something that was missed before. Technology continues to advance, and with it, new possibilities for solving old cases emerge. Detectives remain cautiously optimistic that one day they will have answers for Sammy's family. Sammy's case is a reminder of how quickly life can change. One moment, a mother is watching her son play. The next moment, he is gone. It is every parent's worst nightmare, and for Sammy's mother, it has been a living nightmare for 25 years. The not knowing is perhaps the cruelest part. If there was confirmation of what happened, as painful as that would be, at least there would be closure. But without answers, there is only endless wondering, endless hoping, endless pain. The impact of cases like Sammy's extends far beyond the immediate family. The entire community is affected. Neighbors who were there that day carry guilt, wondering if they could have done something differently. Other parents become hyper-vigilant, never letting their children out of sight, living in fear that what happened to Sammy could happen to their child. The sense of safety and trust in a community is shattered when a child vanishes. If you have any information about Sammy Resendiz, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact the San Bernardino Police Department. Sometimes a small detail that did not seem important 25 years ago could be the key to solving this case today. It is never too late to come forward. Sammy's family deserves answers. Sammy deserves to be found.